The streets of New Berlin hummed with the faint buzz of electric cars and the low murmur of human chatter. Above, the crimson glow of the moon loomed larger than usual, a celestial anomaly that had sent scientists scrambling for explanations. On the surface, it was a calm, typical evening for Celeste Harper, a 17-year-old prodigy with a knack for astrophysics. She had just exited the research institute where she interned, clutching her tablet loaded with data from the recent lunar study. The air felt heavier tonight, almost alive. Celeste was halfway across the city square when the first ripple in the sky appeared. It shimmered like heat waves, distorting the view of the towering skyline. She paused, looking up, while others continued about their routines, unaware of the anomaly above. Her instincts screamed danger, but before she could act, the ripple expanded into a gaping tear. A ship descended from the breach, its hull matte black and absorbing the faint light around it. The silence was broken by a piercing, high-pitched frequency. Civilians collapsed to the ground, clutching their heads. Celeste tried to run, her vision blurring and her limbs heavy. But before she could move further, a beam of light engulfed her. She screamed, her voice swallowed by the vacuum of the transport field, and then she was gone. When she awoke, Celeste found herself restrained in an alien chamber. The walls pulsed with an organic luminescence, casting eerie shadows over the array of tools and instruments spread out before her. A cold chill ran down her spine as she noticed the tall, angular figures standing nearby, aliens with elongated heads, shimmering blue skin, and glowing eyes devoid of emotion. Human subject acquired, one of them said, its voice telepathic and emotionless. Celeste strained against her restraints, her mind racing with fear and questions. "Why are you doing this?" she shouted, her voice trembling. The tallest of the aliens stepped closer. "Your kind has grown, defiant. We require knowledge of your limits." Before she could protest, pain erupted through her body as one of the devices activated. It felt as though every cell in her body was being torn apart and stitched back together, over and over again. Celeste screamed, her cries echoing in the chamber. The aliens observed with clinical detachment, recording her responses. Hours passed, or perhaps only minutes, it was impossible to tell. Celeste's mind began to fracture under the relentless torment. Her pleas for mercy fell on deaf ears, her thoughts muddled by the unyielding agony. As her vision dimmed and her body grew cold, she heard one of the aliens speak, subject terminated. And then, there was darkness. But darkness did not last. Exactly 37 minutes later, Celeste gasped awake. The restraints were gone, and the pain had vanished. She sat up, her breaths ragged and disoriented. Around her, the alien figures stood frozen, their glowing eyes wide with something she had never seen before, fear. "Impossible," one of them murmured, stepping back. Celeste's body felt strange, as though it no longer entirely belonged to her. Her veins glowed faintly with a silvery light, and her mind was clearer than it had ever been. She looked down at her hands, realizing they were emitting the same glow. What did you do to me?" she whispered, her voice reverberating unnaturally. The aliens didn't answer. Instead, they began to retreat, their confident demeanor replaced with panic. Celeste stood, her movements fluid and powerful. The chamber itself seemed to respond to her presence, its pulsing lights intensifying. "You broke me," she said, her voice growing steady, "and now I'm something else." The tallest alien raised a hand, a weapon forming from its arm. It fired a pulse of energy directly at her, but the blast dissipated inches from her body, absorbed into the silvery glow. Celeste's eyes widened as she realized what was happening. Her fear turned to anger. "You tortured me," she growled, stepping forward. The alien stumbled back, fear etched into its features. "Now, it's your turn to understand pain." With a single gesture, Celeste unleashed a wave of energy that tore through the chamber, shattering the alien instruments and sending her captors sprawling. They screamed, not from pain, but from the sheer force of her power, a power she was only beginning to comprehend. The ripple in space opened again, and without hesitation, Celeste stepped through, leaving behind a ship in chaos. As she emerged back over Earth, her glowing form hovered above New Berlin. The city below was in disarray, its people still recovering from the alien attack. Celeste looked down, her resolve hardening. She wasn't the same girl who had been taken. She had been changed, reborn. And now, the galaxy would know what it meant to defy humanity. Celeste hovered over New Berlin like a living star, her silvery glow bathing the city in an ethereal light. Below, chaos reigned. Civilians scattered in confusion, their faces a mix of awe and terror at the strange figure in the sky. News drones zipped through the air, broadcasting live feeds to every corner of the globe. The footage showed Celeste, radiant and unearthly, her eyes burning with a brilliance that seemed to pierce through the screen. Her thoughts were a maelstrom. She could hear the distant whispers of the aliens, their voices telepathically brushing against her mind even as they recoiled in fear. She felt a deep connection to something vast and ancient, like a current of power surging through her veins. It was intoxicating, but also disorienting. What had they done to her? What had she become? Suddenly, her senses sharpened. She could feel the atmosphere around her, the subtle vibrations of the planet's electromagnetic field, even the faint hum of distant machinery. It was overwhelming, and yet, she felt in control. She clenched her fists, willing the energy within her to settle, and the glow around her dimmed slightly. "Celeste," a familiar voice called from below. She looked down to see Dr. Ethan Parrish, her mentor from the Research Institute, standing amidst the crowd. His face was a mixture of relief and apprehension. "Is that you?" She descended slowly, her feet touching the ground without a sound. The crowd parted, keeping their distance. Ethan stepped forward cautiously. "Ethan," she said, her voice resonating with an otherworldly timbre. "They took me. They changed me." Ethan's eyes widened. "We saw the ship. Everyone did. The whole world watched as it appeared, and then," he hesitated, his gaze shifting to her glowing hands. "What did they do to you?" Before she could answer, a deafening roar echoed through the sky. Everyone turned to see another two opening in the atmosphere. This time, a fleet of alien ships poured through, their sleek, ominous forms blotting out the sun. The crowd erupted in panic, scattering in every direction. Celeste felt a surge of anger. She had barely returned, and now they were back to finish what they started. The largest ship hovered above the city, its hull gleaming with an iridescent sheen. A beam of light shot down, and from it emerged one of the aliens she recognized from the torture chamber. It floated above the ground, its elongated form radiating authority. "Human anomaly," it said, its telepathic voice reverberating through her mind and the minds of everyone around. "You were an experiment. A mistake. Surrender yourself, and this world will remain intact." Celeste stepped forward, her silvery glow intensifying. "You think you can threaten my world after what you did to me?" Her voice was steady, defiant. "I'm not your experiment. I'm your end." The alien tilted its head, seemingly unfazed. "You misunderstand. You are not in control of what you have become. That power will consume you." "Let me worry about that," she snapped, her hands igniting with crackling energy. Without warning, the alien raised its arm and fired a pulse of energy at her. Celeste instinctively raised her hand, and the blast dissolved against an invisible shield. She countered with a wave of energy that sent the alien hurtling backward. The force of her attack shook the ground, shattering windows and sending debris flying. The alien ships began to move, their weapons powering up. Celeste could feel the charge in the air as they prepared to fire on the city. Her mind raced. She couldn't let them destroy everything. Focusing her energy, she launched herself into the sky, her body trailing a streak of light as she ascended toward the fleet. Ethan watched in stunned silence as Celeste disappeared into the chaos above. Around him, the panicked crowd sought shelter, but he couldn't move. He had to do something. Celeste was powerful, but she was still just one person, if she could still be called that. In the sky, Celeste tore through the alien fleet with unrelenting force. Her movements were precise, almost instinctual, as though the power within her guided her every action. She destroyed one ship after another, her energy blasts cutting through their shields like paper. But for every ship she destroyed, two more seemed to take its place. The largest ship remained untouched, its commander watching the battle unfold with cold detachment. Celeste could feel its presence, its mind pressing against hers. It was testing her, probing for weaknesses. She pushed back, her mental defenses stronger than she expected. The alien recoiled slightly, but she could sense its smug confidence. "You are alone," it said. "Your defiance is futile." Celeste gritted her teeth. "I'm not alone. Not anymore." She closed her eyes, reaching out with her newfound senses. She could feel the earth below, the people watching, hoping, fearing. She could feel Ethan, his unwavering belief in her. She drew strength from that connection, letting it fuel her resolve. When she opened her eyes, her glow was blinding. She charged toward the flagship, her energy building to a crescendo. The smallest ships tried to intercept her, but she weaved through them effortlessly, her power carving a path of destruction. As she neared the flagship, the alien commander raised a hand. A massive barrier of energy materialized around the ship, pulsing with a dark, malevolent force. Celeste didn't hesitate. She focused all her energy into a single point, a sphere of pure light that grew brighter and hotter with each passing second. The commander's voice echoed in her mind. "You cannot win." Celeste's voice was calm, resolute. "Watch me." With a primal scream, she hurled the sphere at the barrier. The impact was cataclysmic, a blinding explosion of light and sound that shook the very fabric of reality. When the light faded, the barrier was gone, and the flagship hung in the sky, vulnerable. Celeste hovered before it, her body battered but still glowing. She raised her hand, ready to deliver the final blow. But before she could act, the commander's voice whispered one last time. "You are not the only experiment." The words sent a chill down her spine. Before she could react, the flagship retreated into the tear, disappearing along with the remaining fleet. The sky was silent once more, but the message lingered in her mind. This wasn't over. It was only the beginning. The battlefield felt eerily still after Celeste's hard-fought victory. Smoke billowed from the crater where her first opponent had fallen, the air thick with the acrid scent of scorched earth. Around her, the military scrambled to regroup, their faces a mixture of awe and terror. But Celeste had no time to revel in her win. She could feel the tension in the air, the quiet before the next storm. The other ships loomed ominously in the sky, their champions undoubtedly preparing to make their move. "Celeste, you need to retreat." Ethan's voice crackled over her comms. "We need time to figure out our next step." "No," she replied, her voice steady despite the exhaustion coursing through her. "If I retreat, they'll target the people. I'm the one they want." Before Ethan could argue, the obelisk emitted another pulse, brighter and stronger than the first. The ground beneath her trembled as 3 more rifts opened in the sky. From each, a new champion descended. Their appearances were wildly different, a towering creature with crystalline limbs that refracted light into deadly beams, a shadowy figure whose form seemed to ripple and distort as if made of liquid darkness, and a machine-like being bristling with advanced weaponry. Celeste took a deep breath, her body already aching from the first fight. She clenched her fists, summoning her energy. The glow around her intensified, casting long shadows across the wreckage of the battlefield. The crystalline champion struck first, firing a barrage of concentrated light beams that sliced through the air with terrifying precision. Celeste darted to the side, her movements fueled by a combination of instinct and desperation. The beams carved deep trenches into the earth, narrowly missing her each time. She countered with a surge of energy, hurling a wave of radiant light at her attacker. The crystal champion absorbed it, their body refracting the energy into a dazzling array of beams that ricocheted wildly across the battlefield. One struck a nearby tank, reducing it to molten slag. The second champion, the shadowy figure, moved in next, their amorphous form gliding across the ground like a living shadow. They enveloped Celeste in a suffocating darkness, their presence leaching the light from her body. She struggled, her energy flickering as the darkness pressed down on her. Through sheer force of will, Celeste unleashed a burst of light, forcing the Shadow Champion to retreat. But the effort left her vulnerable. The machine-like champion seized the opportunity, launching a barrage of missiles and plasma bolts. She threw up a shield of energy, but the impact sent her sprawling. "Celeste, get out of there!" Ethan's voice was frantic now. "No," she shouted, pushing herself to her feet. "I can do this." Her resolve hardened as she realized the truth. The obelisk wasn't just summoning these champions. It was testing her, pushing her to her limits. If she couldn't overcome this challenge, Earth would be lost. With renewed determination, Celeste turned her focus to the obelisk. If she could sever its connection to the champions, she might stand a chance. But the champions weren't about to let her succeed. The crystalline being attacked again, their limbs elongating into razor-sharp blades that slashed at her with incredible speed. Celeste dodged and weaved, her energy flaring as she countered with blasts of light. Each hit chipped away at the champion's crystalline form, but they seemed unfazed. The Shadow Champion rejoined the fray, their darkness intertwining with the crystal being's light in a chaotic dance. Together, they overwhelmed Celeste, forcing her onto the defensive. She gritted her teeth, her body screaming in protest as she fought to keep up. Then, the Machine Champion unleashed their ultimate weapon, a massive energy cannon that charged with a high-pitched whine before firing a devastating beam. Celeste barely had time to react, throwing up a shield that buckled under the immense force. The beam struck the ground behind her, creating a massive explosion that sent her flying. She hit the ground hard, her vision swimming. Pain radiated through her body, and for a moment, she thought she couldn't get back up. But then she saw them, the civilians huddled in makeshift shelters, watching her with a mix of fear and hope. They were counting on her. Summoning every ounce of strength she had left, Celeste pushed herself to her feet. Her glow intensified, brighter than ever before. The champions hesitated, as if sensing the shift in her power. "You want to fight," she said, her voice echoing with a resonance that wasn't entirely human. "Come and get it." The crystalline champion charged first, their blades gleaming. Celeste met them head-on, her energy surging as she struck with a devastating punch that shattered their body into 1,000 shards. The Shadow Champion attacked next, their darkness enveloping her once more. But this time, she didn't resist. Instead, she absorbed their energy, her light growing even stronger. The Machine Champion was all that remained. They unleashed their arsenal, but Celeste was faster. She dodged their attacks with ease, her movements a blur. With a final, explosive burst of energy, she destroyed the machine, their metallic form crumpling to the ground. The battlefield was silent once more, save for the hum of the obelisk. Celeste stood amidst the wreckage, her body glowing like a star. But she knew this wasn't the end. The obelisk still pulsed with power, and she could feel the presence of more champions waiting to be unleashed. She turned to the command center, her voice steady but urgent. "We have to shut it down. Now." Ethan's voice came through her comms, filled with determination. "We're working on it. Just hold on a little longer." As the next wave of rifts began to open, Celeste prepared herself for the fight of her life. The champions were relentless, but so was she. Earth's fate hung in the balance, and she was determined to see it through. The air was electric with tension as the battlefield stood on the brink of another clash. Celeste's body radiated with a blinding light, her energy pulsating as if synced with the heartbeat of the earth itself. The obelisk loomed in the center of the chaos, a malevolent beacon drawing power from the destruction it orchestrated. Around her, the remnants of the alien champions lay in shattered fragments, but the sky rippled ominously with more rifts opening. From the largest of these rifts descended a massive figure, unlike any Celeste had faced before. Towering over the battlefield, the new arrival was a fusion of organic and mechanical parts. Its body glimmered with obsidian plates streaked with glowing red veins of energy. Its 4 arms ended in weapons, blades, cannons, and claws, while its face was a terrifying amalgamation of alien intelligence and cold, calculating machinery. The entity exuded an aura of command, a being that didn't just fight but orchestrated annihilation. The obelisk's pulse grew louder, resonating with the champion as if feeding it. Celeste staggered slightly, feeling the oppressive weight of its presence. For the first time, fear crept into her thoughts. This wasn't just another test, it was the endgame. "Celeste, we've got a plan," Ethan's voice cut through the noise. His tone was resolute, but there was an edge of desperation. "We've identified the obelisk's core. If we can overload it, we might be able to shut it down for good." "What's the catch?" she asked, dodging as the colossal champion's cannon fired a beam that carved a molten trench into the ground. The core's protected by layers of energy fields. You'll have to hold that thing off long enough for us to break through. Great, she muttered, her light flaring as she dodged another strike. Just another day saving the world. The champion advanced, its movements deceptively fast for its size. It swung a massive blade at her, the air crackling with the energy that trailed behind it. Celeste countered, her hands glowing as she caught the blade, her feet digging into the ground from the impact. The clash sent shockwaves rippling across the battlefield. The champion didn't hesitate. Its other arms came into play, slashing and firing in rapid succession. Celeste danced through the onslaught, her energy flaring as she deflected strikes and retaliated with blasts of light. Each hit she landed barely dented the creature's armor, its obsidian plates regenerating almost instantly. You're going to have to do better than that, she growled, her determination burning brighter than ever. She summoned a surge of power, channeling it into a concentrated beam that struck the champion square in the chest. The impact forced it back, but only briefly. As the champion recovered, it unleashed a flurry of attacks, its cannons firing in tandem with its blades. Celeste dodged, her movements a blur as she fought to stay ahead of the relentless assault. The ground around her erupted in explosions, the battlefield becoming a maelstrom of fire and light. Celeste, we're almost through the first layer. Ethan's voice crackled over her comms. Hurry it up, she shouted, her breath coming in ragged gasps. She could feel her energy waning, the strain of the fight taking its toll. The champion seemed to sense her weakness, pressing its advantage. It swung a blade with devastating force, and though Celeste managed to block it, the impact sent her flying. She crashed into the ground, the wind knocked out of her. Get up, she muttered to herself, pushing against the pain. You've come too far to give up now. She rose unsteadily to her feet, her light dim but still burning. The champion charged, its movements a blur of deadly precision. Celeste gritted her teeth and met its attack head-on, her energy flaring as she fought with everything she had. Second layer down. Ethan's voice came through again. One more to go. Make it fast, she yelled, narrowly dodging a strike that left a massive crater in the ground. She countered with a desperate blast of energy, her light flickering as she pushed herself to her limits. The champion staggered but didn't fall. It raised its cannon, the barrel glowing as it prepared to fire a devastating beam. Celeste knew she couldn't avoid it. Instead, she braced herself, pouring all her energy into a shield as the beam struck. The impact was catastrophic, the force of it driving her to her knees. Her shield buckled under the strain, cracks spiderwebbing across its surface. She screamed, her light flaring as she fought to hold it together. Core exposed. Ethan's voice was triumphant. Celeste, you need to get out of there. We're detonating in 10 seconds. Not yet, she shouted, her gaze fixed on the champion. She wasn't about to let it escape, not after everything it had done. Summoning the last of her strength, she channeled all her energy into a final attack. Her light burned brighter than ever, a blinding beacon that lit up the battlefield. She launched herself at the champion, her body a streak of light as she struck with devastating force. The impact shattered its armor, the energy coursing through it until it disintegrated in a burst of light. The obelisk pulsed violently, cracks spreading across its surface as the detonation sequence activated. Celeste barely had time to react before the explosion engulfed everything in a blinding light. When the light faded, the battlefield was silent. The obelisk was gone, reduced to rubble. The alien rifts had disappeared, leaving the sky clear once more. Celeste lay amidst the wreckage, her body battered but alive. Her light had dimmed, but it still flickered faintly, a testament to her resilience. Celeste. Ethan's voice came through her comms, filled with concern. Are you okay? She let out a weak laugh. I think I've had enough excitement for one day. Cheers erupted from the command center as the realization of their victory sank in. Earth was safe, at least for now. But Celeste knew this wasn't the end. The obelisk had been a warning, a prelude to something far greater. And when that time came, she would be ready.